Hi, I'm Martin Curtis, and this is Still Change from the Centre. You might recall before I went away and decided to have a good time on holiday, I did 2 videos about how to pick an election candidate for local elections. Just talking about things that I think are important and far more important than just looking at the political party. And just for reference, I'll put them up again. So the first one of these, make sure you turn up to the polling station and make a mark. And that's not just about turning up the polling station. The point is vote, whether it's postal vote or whatever. Please get out and vote. Understand the role that your councillors are there to play, which is not just about acting as a voice for you inside the council chamber. Understand that the right individual is far more important than the right political party. Don't take everything that comes through your door at face value. I'm going to talk about this a bit more later on. Get to know who your candidates are. Ask them questions, because only when you get to know what makes your candidates tick will you know whether they're good enough to represent you and the place that you live. Don't support candidates who've got nothing positive to say. Get to know the local party. Really important, this. Let's say you're a Labour voter, but you'd consider yourself centre left. And your local Labour Party, your local activists are very, very hard left. Is that who you want to vote for? You're only going to find out what they're like and what their politics is really like by getting to know what the local party is about. Get to know what the issues are. And again, really important, are your candidates talking about the things that are important to you? Are they talking about the things that are important to the people around you? Be wary of broad brush statements. Great example is, I'm going to fix your potholes. What does that mean? What are they going to get your council to do that's different to get your potholes fixed? Is the council for which they are standing responsible for pothole repairs? So get to know those sort of issues. And be wary of candidates who just say what they think you want to hear. And this is really important. You will get people knock on your door and they will say about a certain topic exactly what they think you want to hear. But they will go next door and on the same topic say something completely different because your neighbour wants to hear different. That's not all candidates by a long way. It's not most of them by any stretch of the imagination, but they are certainly there. So those are my 10 things. What I want to do is build on those a little bit in this video, just to bring out a few examples of some things that just maybe make you think a little bit about how you vote. And then, but not until I've talked about this election in particular and some issues around the number of candidates in particular, which I think is really important too. I suspect that the elections that are being held on this cycle, so 2026, they last would have been done in 2022, and before that 2018. I suspect for these elections, the number of candidates is more than there ever has been. And we should welcome that. That's great for democracy. But it does flag up some issues about first past the post, which some of you will know is something I particularly care about. I think the time for first past the post is done and we need to move towards PR. And this is a great example of why. So the first reason really is about one of the arguments that first past the post advocates use about elections. And that is that first past the post elections are easy. So I went and did some digging in a ward in my neighbouring district, which is Huntingdonshire. And I did that area because I know it well, but because I haven't got elections in my local area. And I went to one particular ward. I can't say I did it at random. I picked this one on purpose. But this is a ward where the electors will be choosing 3 candidates. So it's what they call a 3-member ward. The last time this seat was fought was in 2022, as I said, and there were 6 candidates, 3 Conservatives and 3 Labour. And in that instance, 3 Labour, 1. That's no surprise, to be fair, when you think you've got a choice between Labour and Conservative, and the Conservatives were at quite a low. But compare that 6 to this time around. This time around, there are 15 candidates. And let me just go through these, because they're not just 15 candidates from 5 different parties. You have got 3 Conservatives, 3 Reform, 3 Green, 3 Lib Dems, 1 Independent, 1 Labour, and 1 Party of Women. Now, the thing that might stand out for you there is only 1 Labour. I wouldn't hang up on that too much. It's quite typical in this time of the cycle, when you've got a Labour Party of government, for parties to struggle to find candidates. And actually, overall, the Labour Party haven't done too bad. But sometime or another, people are going to have to go to the ballot box, and they're going to have to put up to 3 crosses in the ballot box. And if they want to vote for a single party, or they want to vote for an independent, they've only got one choice, and that is to vote independent. And then they've got to sit and choose, where do the other 2 votes go? Which other 2 out of these 15 do I choose and do I vote for? Now, that is no simpler than having to put different preferences into boxes during a proportional representation election. And so this idea and this myth that first past the post is simpler is busted by this election. The other thing that's important in this seat is turnout and what that actually means for the end result. So again, 2022, this seat, the turnout was 24.9%. And I suspect it'll be there or thereabouts. And on average, at that point, I don't have up-to-date figures, but I'm going to use that point, 8,793 was the number of electors. So 8,793 was the number of people that were eligible to vote. Of those, 24.9% turned out. So let's take that figure for this time. 24.9% of people are going to turn out, and 1 in 5 of those candidates is going to get elected. So the minimum vote that candidate would need of that 24.9% who turn out is 20%. So we are going to see candidates elected with 20% of the votes of 24.9% of people who turn out. So we're talking about candidates potentially being elected with something around 437 votes in a ward of nearly 8,800 people. Now, any candidate that's elected, that's put themselves up, take my absolute hat off to them. I take my hat off to any candidate that's standing. However, as far as the system is concerned, you have to start asking whether you can call somebody being elected on 437 votes out of 8,800, whether you can call that a mandate. And that's part of the reason why we have to start thinking seriously about a move towards proportional representation. Once again, the usual plea before I move on. If you like what I'm saying here, it's stimulating a bit of thought, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Subscriptions are really important in YouTube, so the more the better. But also likes and comments are also welcome. If you disagree with the sympathies that I'm expressing, tell me, and I'll probably reply. If you just put vote green, which somebody did, I might ignore it in future. I didn't last time. I just said vote green if he's the best candidate. But in this case, I'm going to start with a Lib Dem leaflet for various reasons, one of which is the Lib Dems are fairly renowned for this amongst politicians. So this is part of a Lib Dem leaflet that went through. It's a Lib Dem bar graph, and it's a little bit, it distorts the situation a little bit in my view. So if you look at this, what they're saying is the Lib Dems are really, really close to Labour, and therefore, if you want to beat Labour, vote tactically and vote for the Lib Dems. It's a good message, and I understand it, but the data that supports this bar graph, which is underneath it, and which you can barely read along with the imprint, is based on information from 2022. Now, have a think about it a little bit. 2022, think about how popular, yes, the Labour Party were, but think about the Green Party. The Labour Party were absolutely on a high, but the Green Party were nowhere near where they are now. So this situation and this data is not relevant to the 2026 election, but it suits the Lib Dems' purposes, which is why it's on here. And that's the sort of stuff where I talked about never trust things at face value, because you need to drum down and dig down a little bit deeper. And one of the things that I've discovered through looking at these leaflets is that the Green Party are doing the same thing, and the Green Party have also started doing bar charts. Here's a great example. This is from a city in the north of England. And what I really liked about this is coming up later on. But this is Tom saying only Labour, only Tom can beat Labour here. Tom's the Green candidate. Now, what he's saying is that Tom is just ahead of Labour, and therefore you want to guarantee that Tom is going to win, and you're normally a Reform, Lib Dem or Conservative voter, then vote Green. But the data in this chart are based on from an organisation called Britain Votes Now. You can find their website, but it's based on data for the whole of the city in which he wants to stand, and not the ward in which he wants to stand. What I thought was intriguing was when you dig into the data and you actually have a look at the ward, this is what you come out with. So Tom is absolutely streets ahead in the opinion polls, and the one that is most likely to win this ward. However, this doesn't give the message that he wants. The message that he wants is, this is tight, so lend me your vote so I can beat Labour. That's not what this says. This says I'm going to romp away with it, so let's not bother. So he's used a completely different set of data that is less relevant to him, and he's used that. I think that's, again, a little bit naughty, and it's, again, an example of where you shouldn't take something at face value. Here's another one. This one highlights a slightly different point, but this is a Reform candidate. The front side of this leaflet's fair enough, and it's a nice description of the candidate. Talks about her background, talks about why and what she can make how she can make a difference. No, it doesn't say how she can make a difference. It talks about the fact that she believes she can make a difference. And you would expect to then look at the flip side and see a little bit more depth and a little bit of understanding of how she's going to make a difference, rather than just saying I can. But this is what's there, and this is on a huge number of Lib Dem leaflets. Lib Dem leaflets, a huge number of Reform leaflets, I have to say. And this is basically Nigel Farage's national agenda. Now, if that candidate knocked on my door, I would probably ask them how they, as a candidate, are going to deliver these things. Because these are national issues, they are not local issues, and the candidate can't deliver them. And I think the flip side of that leaflet is really disappointing, because I think the first side of it sells the individual quite well. So I'm going to move on now. I'm going to talk about national campaigning and how national campaigning is getting in the way a little bit of local elections. And I'm going to start with one. This was actually published on April the 1st. And I have to say that when I first saw this, I had to go back and double check that it wasn't an April Fool's joke. So there's 2 points here. The first one is, how are the Conservatives ever going to introduce this? How are they ever going to implement this as a policy when the next general election isn't until 2029? And as an example, the situation with potholes may have changed dramatically. I certainly hope it has. So that's the first thing. So this is a policy that's aimed at the local government election. So the Conservatives have got no hope of him. So if you vote for your candidate based on the Conservatives are going to sort out potholes because of this, then you're going to be disappointed. But it is also the Conservatives saying that they are going to nationalise effectively pothole services, which is absolutely ludicrous. So just think about having a pothole outside the front of your house. Yes, they're tough to get mended. And yes, the country is going through a big issue with this at the moment. But having to go and effectively be at the gift of Westminster to get them fixed, you sort of already are, but not in this way. It's absolutely ludicrous. Nationalising pothole services is effectively what this is about. But the Conservatives aren't the only ones. This is one from the Liberal Democrats. This is talking about the Liberal Democrats making sure that GP surgeries are open as homes are built and are funded by developers. Now, let's be absolutely clear here. Funding for GP services are provided by developers when planning applications are agreed, and they're part of the consultation process that you go through before you make decisions. And the Lib Dems know this, and they don't say in this article, in this thing, that they don't say that developers don't provide that, but it twists and leans towards that. And there's a reason for that, because a lot of people don't understand it and they are frustrated with the amount of development and how infrastructure seems to them. But, there's a reality, which is that it is the national frameworks that potentially let this down if it doesn't happen well enough. It's certainly not a local issue. It's certainly not something that your local councillor is going to be able to deal with. Now, it's not just the Lib Dems and the Conservatives that do this. And it's worth saying that the Labour Party are in a slightly different position, because they can announce policy that affects local government and has a local government feel about it and actually implement it at the same time. And that does make a big difference, and it can have an influence on people. So this is an example of that. Labour to give 130 cultural venues a funding boost. And so what this does is it gives local council candidates an opportunity, if it's an important issue in their area, something to say to their local people, to say the Labour Party are doing this to protect your venue. It's actually a really important issue to me, this. But actually, a local candidate and a local council candidate is not really going to be able to influence this. And it's also true that a lot of the issues with venues are about visiting artists and how artists from overseas, particularly Europe, are not coming over as much because of additional costs, because of Brexit and other stuff. But that's the Labour Party pretending or saying that we're helping you locally and giving local candidates something to bite onto. So I hope that's given you a few examples about why you need to dig deeper with everything that comes through your door in this election campaign. I would pledge you to please vote wisely. Please think about what I've said. Please think about your own ideas. Yes, comment, let me know. The most important thing, though, is the two things I'm going to say, actually. The first one is, please do get out there and vote, put a cross somewhere. That's really, really important. The other thing is, I'm encouraging you to get in touch with political parties. I'm encouraging you to get in touch with candidates. That's great. Please do it. When you do it, please do it politely, so that you're not creating and adding to the malaise there is in politics. It horrifies me, some of the stuff some of my friends are getting on X and other places from residents. If you engage with anybody political, respect the fact that they've had the guts to stand for office. Ask them politely, be firm, be honest with them, but be polite. And once again, thank you very, very much for taking the time to listen to my rants. Thank you very much.